Radiator removal on a Skoda Fabia MK1 99 to 2007. On Fabias without air conditioning, the radiator is easily removed from the car in situ. You just need to take the under tray and bumper off. As without the AC condenser attached to the front of the radiator, there's enough space to move it back, down and out through the bottom of the car. But on AC models, which most are, it's best removed by taking the front, what is called the lock carrier off, basically the front of the car. I've done a previous video on this, so be sure to check that one out. I'll leave a link in the description and at the end of the video. But for now, I'll just run through quickly the process of taking the front end off. Disconnect the battery and then take the under tray out. There's a number of T25 screws holding this in place. I'm going to drain the coolant, just take the cap off the expansion tank. Then if we go underneath with a bowl, we can find a little tap, which is quite handy now, and you just need to turn that and loosen it and it will all come out then. Squeeze the pipes a bit if you want to get more out, and if your tap's jammed you can just take the pipe off. Now transfer the coolant into a container so you can dispose of it responsibly. And then the bumper, take the T25s out underneath the wheel arch. Put a rug down, take the T25s out underneath the bumper. Now there's a number of pin lock connectors under the front sill. Undo but don't take out the two T30 screws at the top of the bumper. Then carefully but firmly release the bumper from the wing seam. Bend it out from the wheel arch slightly and sort of lift up and forward. Take out the T30 screws. And then lift the bumper off the mounts. Detach each electrical connection, and we need to take off the intercooler ducting. And now take off the solid metal bumper. The air intake and plastic ducting, and the Bowden cable for the bonnet catch. Finally take off the bonnet seal. Now all we need to do is detach the radiator and condenser, which is housed in the lock carrier at the front. It's held in place by 4 T30 screws, here, here, just here, and one just here close to the light. But before we go ahead and do that, we need to hold up or strap up the radiator and condenser to stop it slipping down, as you don't want to put too much pressure on the AC pipes. Attach the strap securely around the fan cover and the oil filler spout. Then take the 4 T30 screws out. Mine are a bit rusty, so I'm spraying them with penetrating fluid. You have to just be careful taking the top right screw out, just in case it slips down in between the frames somehow. The only other difficult screw is the one on the left hand side of the vehicle near the headlight. You could take the headlights out, but you don't need to do. You can get to this screw with just at a slight angle with a 1/4 inch tool set. And now you can see the radiator and condenser are completely free of the lock carrier. From here the lock carrier is only held on by 4 more screw bolts and the electrical connections onto the lights. Be careful when you take the last bolt out, as the carrier will slip forward a little bit. detach the last electrical connection and then move it away from the car. Here's the condenser in front of the radiator, held on by 4 T30 screws, just here at the front, on both sides. And then if we follow the pipe work up, there's another screw just behind here in the centre, and a final one down at the side, right down here. I don't know if you can just about see, just here. That's all you need to take off for the condenser. The fans on the back are all held on in one unit with 4 screws. You can leave those in place for now. There's a connector on the thermal cutout just here, and 2 further connectors for each fan lower down that are quite hard to get to, that slide into a plastic holder on the back. And here's the relay for the fans. As the screws are very rusty, I'll do the usual spray job on them. Leave them for a while and then take the screws out. Lower the strap down a little bit to get access to the ones at the rear. Just going to lift it back up again. Just got to be careful not to stress the AC pipes too much. Now that the condenser is completely separated from the radiator, we need to tie them up separately. As the only thing that's holding it up on the near side is the radiator itself, which you're going to remove. What we need to do now is take off the hose connectors, or the hoses themselves, whichever you find easiest. I find the hoses come off easier. I'll show you those connectors when I've got the radiator off. When you're taking the bottom one off, make sure you've got something underneath it to catch any remaining coolant. Best to use a pair of pipe wrenches for these. Squeeze the things together. This is a bit rusty on here. Right, I've managed to get it off. It's just a question of pulling the rubber off then. That's off, just the top one now. This should be a bit easier. Now you want to take off the thermal switch connector. It's a standard bag connector, you just pull up on the little tag with your thumbnail or a screwdriver. And that should come off. The 2 fan connectors are in a sort of bracket that's on the back of the unit, and they just sort of slide up to release them from the bracket to start with. You have to be careful with it because the bracket's very delicate. It's very thin plastic. It's a bit like 2 U-shaped slots with a barb at the top that locks them in place. Just got to pull that out a little bit. It's a little bit difficult to see. I'll show you on the following shot. Here's the little plastic U-shaped bracket with the barbs, it's a little bit weak, and the fan connectors. Thermal switch connector, you just pull up on this little tag here. With the fan connectors, the little tag is at the top on one of them here. You just push that in and it'll click to release it. Just need to pull it apart now. And the other one is the other way around, but essentially the same type of clip. Just push on the little tab and it'll click. I'll just show you how the connectors slide into this U-shaped bracket, as it's a little bit fiddly, and being so thin you could easily break it. So that's how they fit in situ. Getting them out isn't that easy, you just sort of pull it apart a little bit where the barb is, and then pull up and jiggle it about a bit. There might actually be an easier way, I'm not sure. You could of course try to disconnect the connectors in the bracket, but I was worried I'd break the actual bracket doing that, with it being so weak. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you did break the bracket, then the connectors would be loose and potentially rattle about and make a lot of noise, or even go into the fan. So you'd have to find a way of securing them, probably with some zip ties. So now everything's detached from the radiator. We just need to carefully lower it down and remove it. Put something underneath the radiator that's soft to protect it. And it's best to do this with the straps, just lowering the straps down, freeing it from the AC condenser and pipes. Just do a little bit at a time, freeing it from anything that snags as you do it. When playing this video clip back in the editing suite, I noticed that the thermal switch is actually still attached on this shot. So apologies for that, it should actually be detached at this stage. I'll have to sack my continuity manager, and no doubt that's why it's holding up on the left hand side. When you've got it lowered down to the ground, remove the strap, take it out from the open side, and take care not to do what I've done here and let the condenser scratch the front of the radiator face. Sorry guys, no excuse for that. Uncle Bob will be really pleased. I can hear him tutting now. We'd better sack the mechanic. It's alright, we just won't tell the customer. I've heard that before. Here's the radiator with the plastic fan cowling on the rear, which has a number of bolts and screws holding it all together, which on mine are quite corroded, so I'll have to clean those up and spray them with some penetrating fluid. Let that soak a while, and I'll just have a look at the face of the radiator, see what damage I've done to it. Obviously this should be avoided, but it's okay, it's not too bad. I'll just clean it up by running a vacuum over it. I'll first take the whole cowling off, which is just held on by 4 T30 screws on each corner. As you can see, some of these are really badly corroded, so I'll have to be careful getting these out, as they're likely to be jammed into the plastic moulding and won't be easy to remove. I've managed to get that one off at least. Just 3 more to go. And if you wanted to, you could replace the whole unit with both of the fans, but you don't have to do, you can just replace the individual fans, which I'll show you how to take off. Looks like I've been unlucky here and broken one off. I hardly put any pressure on it as well, so I'll have to sort that out. Anyway, we can lift that off now. Have a look at the fans. They're spinning nice and smoothly, which is what you want, as well as not snagging on the cowling. If they feel rough when you spin them or they're loose, then they need replacing. So I've decided to drill out the remaining part of the screw that's in the radiator housing, which isn't easy to do as it's all plastic. Anyway, you get the idea. In the end I could only get part of the screw out, so I just had to use the screw to one side slightly, which did actually work okay. Turning to the fans now. These are held in place by a 3-armed mounting bracket on the back, T30 screws, which you have to take off because the fan comes off from the other side. But it's best to loosen all the 10mm nuts on the motor first, before then taking all the tripod screws out. The cable and connector just clip into the clips, you just pull them up and out of this little trough. And the cable on the other fan has got this little plastic cover over it, which just clips off. It's got 4 clips on each corner, you just pull up on those and that comes off. Then simply clicks back into place like so. Once you've taken the 3 motor nuts off, you can now detach the 3-arm tripod leg mount off. Just pull the cable through the centre. My fan's working fine and it's quite smooth running. It's not rough, so I don't need to replace it. So I'll just put that one back. You'll know if yours is failing, it'll start making a lot of noise, or it'll just not work at all. Replacing the fan, place it back down on the backing unit. Feed the cable through the tripod mount. And align the cable on one of the arms. Then align the motor to the tripod mount. Lifting it up a little bit to put the nuts on. Before tightening those up first. Once they're nice and tight, then tighten the tripod mounting screws onto the backing unit. If you want to replace the small flimsy motor connection mount at the side of the backing unit, then you've just got to turn it over and nip together the small protrusions. One's a square one and one's a round one, as you can see here. Snip them together. And replacing it, you just line it up and push it back into place till it clicks. Make sure you've got this little rubber strip that's in the middle of the mounting bracket, which fits against the radiator, which is quite vital to stop any vibrations. While you've got the radiator out, it's worth replacing the thermo switch. Just here, just unbolt that. Here's my radiator part number, which is for the 1.9 TDI engine. And if we look here, we've got the rubber mounting bushes which just slot on. They've got a little key in the centre of the plastic and it'll only fit on the spigot one way, so you can't get these wrong. The bottom ones are different to the top ones. As I mentioned earlier in the video, these are the plastic quick fit connectors for the radiator, but unfortunately they're not all that quick and are quite stiff to take apart. Stick your screwdriver in and open up the little clip, which is all that locks it in place. That's quite easy. Now remember, this isn't in situ and I've got all my weight on it outside the car and it's still quite stiff to get off. The idea is good, but in practice, well, let's just see. Just pull them off like that. There's a rubber seal inside and they only go on one way with a key. You've got to make sure you push it completely home before locking it in place with the clip. Now, just to compare that with the rubber pipe and how quick that is, I'll just demonstrate that. Clip off, pipe off, pipe on, clip on. I think that's much easier. I'll leave that one up to you guys. Align the fans on the back of the radiator and replace all the screws. Put something soft underneath the condenser so you're ready for inserting the radiator back in. Carefully slip it behind the condenser, and I'll take extra care not to mark the surface this time. Once it's back in behind, I need to put the strap on again, so it'll help me support it while I lift it into place. And I found when you lift it, you could just put your foot underneath the front of it and then tighten the strap. Which I did a couple of times to bring it up to approximately the correct level. Or at least enough to align the condenser onto the holes where the T30 screws go, which is what you want to do next. You should of course replace all these screws with new ones, especially when they're as badly corroded as the ones on mine. Not only will these screws continue to corrode and seizing in the fixtures, but they could end up breaking as the metal will continue to fatigue. That's just something to be mindful of, and my cousin Lionel says not to bother and save your money, so for now I'm going to make do with the old ones. Don't forget this one at the top, and of course this one down here at the side. A little bit difficult to get to this one, so I'll just have to slacken the strap off again. Take the condenser one off first. Refit all the connectors by pushing them home firmly till they click into place. Just remember there's 2 fan connectors and 1 thermal switch connector. Reposition the radiator and condenser, ready for the lock carrier to go on, approximately to start with. You can of course refit the hoses now, or you may prefer to do that later. And then refit the lock carrier. Putting the screws in temporary to start with, before reconnecting the headlights. both sides. Then reposition the radiator and condenser to line up with the screw holes. Then tighten home all the screws. Refit the metal bumper. Tighten the bolts and screws to the correct torque. Refit the intercooler ducting and torque down all the remaining bolts and screws. Refit the bonnet cable and the bonnet seal, which just slides satisfyingly back into position. Now we just need to refill the system with G12 coolant. Fill it up to around the minimum mark when it's cold. Refit the bumper. Reattach the battery. Then run the engine a bit. And fill it up with coolant accordingly. Not forgetting to put the cap back on. And the job's done. Thank you for watching. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.